Love Behind Bars. The steel door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Maya's entire body. And in that moment, she understood that her life as she knew it was over. The orange jumpsuit felt like a second skin of shame, the fluorescent lights overhead casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving glow that seemed designed to strip away any remnants of dignity. She had been sentenced to 5 years for a crime born of desperation, stealing medication for her dying mother, and now she stood in the intake area of Riverside Women's Correctional Facility, 23 years old and certain that hope itself had been locked away, along with her freedom. The other inmates watched her with eyes that had seen too much, survived too much, and Maya dropped her gaze to the concrete floor, wishing she could disappear into its cold gray surface. The first weeks passed in a blur of survival. Instinct and silent tears cried into thin, prison-issue pillows. Maya learned quickly to keep her head down, to move through the daily routines of count, time and meal distribution and rec yard walks, like a ghost haunting her own life. She wrote letters to her mother that went unanswered, not knowing that her mother had passed away 3 weeks into her sentence. The family too ashamed or too angry to inform her. The other inmates kept their distance, sensing in Maya's silence a fragility that made her either pray or simply not worth the effort of knowing. She existed in a bubble of isolation within the overcrowded facility, surrounded by hundreds of women, yet more alone than she had ever been in her life. It was during her 4th week that Maya first noticed Officer Sarah Chen. Sarah was different from the other correctional officers who moved through the facility with either bored indifference or barely concealed contempt. She was in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes that actually seemed to see the inmates as human beings, rather than numbers or problems to be managed. Maya watched from the corner of the day room as Sarah helped an elderly inmate retrieve a photograph that had fallen behind a vending machine, speaking to the woman with genuine kindness, and something long dormant stirred in Maya's chest, a tiny flutter of feeling in a heart she thought had turned to stone. Their first real interaction came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in the prison library, where Maya had taken to spending her free time, losing herself in books that transported her anywhere but here. Sarah was covering for the regular library supervisor, and she found Maya curled in a corner with a worn copy of poetry by Maya Angelou. Sarah approached quietly, and when she spoke, her voice was soft, respectful. She asked Maya what she was reading, and Maya answered in barely more than a whisper, expecting dismissal or mockery. Instead, Sarah smiled and said that Angelou's words had gotten her through her own darkest times, and for the first time since entering this place, Maya felt seen. They talked for 20 minutes about poetry and resilience and the power of words to sustain the spirit. And when count time was called and Maya had to return to her cell, she carried with her something precious, the memory of a conversation that treated her like a person worth knowing. The friendship that developed between them was gradual and careful, built on stolen moments and cautious exchanges that never crossed the strict boundaries of professionalism that Sarah maintained. She would recommend books for Maya, leaving them on the library cart with small notes tucked inside, quotes, or observations that spoke to their shared love of literature. Maya began to live for the shifts when Sarah was working, for the brief conversations in the library or the encouraging words Sarah would offer. When Maya signed up for the facility's GID program, Sarah learned that Maya's mother had died, and she sat with Maya's grief without trying to fix it, simply offering the gift of witness to her pain. In return, Maya began to emerge from her shell of isolation, joining a creative writing group that Sarah had encouraged her to attend, slowly rebuilding a sense of self that incarceration had tried to erase. But somewhere in those months of growing friendship, something shifted and deepened into territory neither of them had anticipated. Maya began to recognize the quickening of her pulse when Sarah entered a room, the way her eyes searched for Sarah's face in every crowd of officers, the hollow ache she felt on Sarah's days off. She tried to suppress these feelings, horrified by their implications and the impossible situation they created. This was a woman in a position of authority, a correctional officer whose job was to maintain security and order, and Maya was an inmate, powerless and trapped. The very notion was not only forbidden but dangerous, a violation of rules that could cost Sarah her career, and Maya whatever small privileges she had earned. Yet, Maya could not control the way her heart opened like a flower toward sunlight whenever Sarah was near, could not stop the dreams that came in the darkness of her cell where Sarah's kindness transformed into something more. What Maya did not know was that Sarah was fighting her own battle with feelings that defied every professional standard she had upheld. Throughout her career, Sarah had noticed Maya from the beginning, had been drawn to something in the young woman's eyes, a gentle soul broken by circumstances, but not destroyed, a resilience wrapped in vulnerability. She had told herself she was simply being a good officer, supporting an inmate's rehabilitation, but she could no longer deny that her interest had become personal, dangerously personal. Sarah lay awake at night thinking about Maya's smile, the rare, genuine, one that appeared when she was absorbed in a book or sharing a poem she had written. She found excuses to work the library shifts, to be in spaces where she might encounter Maya, and she hated herself for the breach of ethics this represented even as she felt powerless to stop. The turning point came during a violent incident in the yard, when a fight broke out near where Maya was sitting alone. In the chaos and confusion, Maya was knocked to the ground, and Sarah was the first to reach her, fear flooding through her system in a way that revealed everything she had been trying to hide from herself. Sarah helped Maya to her feet with hands that trembled slightly, searching her face for injuries, and their eyes met in a moment of raw, unguarded recognition. In Sarah's eyes, Maya saw mirrored her own forbidden feelings, and in that instant, they both understood that what existed between them had transcended the boundaries of officer and inmate, that they had somehow impossibly fallen in love within the confines of a place designed to separate and confine. The knowledge was both salvation and torment. They could not act on their feelings, could not even acknowledge them openly without risking everything. Sarah could lose her job, face criminal charges for fraternization with an inmate. Maya could be transferred to another facility, lose all the progress she had made, or worse, be placed in segregation if their relationship was discovered and mischaracterized. Yet neither could simply turn off what they felt, and so they existed in an agony of nearness and distance, communicating in glances and carefully neutral words that carried layers of meaning only they could decode. Sarah made the agonizing decision to request a transfer to a different unit within the prison, trying to create distance that might allow reason to prevail over emotion. But the separation was unbearable for both of them, and Sarah found herself returning to the library on her breaks, unable to stay away. It was during one of these visits that Sarah slipped Maya a letter, a violation of every protocol she had ever followed. In the privacy of her cell that night, Maya unfolded the single page with shaking hands and read Sarah's confession written in careful script, that she had fallen in love with Maya, that she knew it was wrong and impossible, that she had never felt this way about anyone, that she was sorry for crossing lines that should never be crossed, but she needed Maya to know the truth. Maya wrote back, pouring her heart onto the page in words that came from the deepest part of her soul, describing how Sarah had given her a reason to hope again, how Sarah's kindness had reminded her that she was worthy of love. Even in this place of punishment and shame, they began a secret correspondence, passing letters through a trusted inmate who worked in the library, an older woman named Gloria, who recognized the purity of what she was witnessing and chose to protect it. Through these letters, they built a relationship of emotional intimacy that was perhaps deeper than if they had been free to touch, unburdening themselves of their histories and fears and dreams. Sarah shared that she had grown up in foster care, had built walls around her heart that Maya had somehow scaled, that she had always felt like an outsider, until she found in Maya a kindred spirit who understood what it meant to be alone. Maya wrote about her childhood, about the mother she had tried to save, about the person she wanted to become when she was finally free. They made plans for a future that seemed impossibly distant. Sarah would wait for Maya's release, would be there on the day she walked out of Riverside, would help her build a new life. It was a dream sustained by letters and stolen glances and a love that grew stronger precisely because it was tested by such impossible circumstances. But prison is a place where secrets rarely remain hidden, and eventually whispers began to circulate. Another officer noticed the way Sarah looked at Maya, noticed the extra attention, The time spent in the library. An investigation was initiated, and Sarah was called before a review board. Faced with the choice of lying or losing her career, Sarah chose integrity. She admitted to having feelings for an inmate, but swore she had never acted on them inappropriately, had never touched Maya beyond what was necessary in her duties, had never compromised security or shown favoritism in any official capacity. The truth was nuanced in ways the system was not designed to appreciate, and Sarah was terminated. Her career in corrections ended. Her reputation tarnished. Maya learned of Sarah's firing through the prison grapevine, and the guilt nearly destroyed her. Sarah had lost everything because of their connection, and Maya was trapped behind these walls, unable to do anything except survive the remaining years of her sentence alone. She stopped eating, stopped attending her GED classes, sank into a depression that worried even the hardest inmates around her. But Gloria, the woman who had carried their letters, sat with Maya in the day room one evening and told her something important, that love like theirs was rare and precious, that Sarah had made her own choice, that the only way to honor Sarah's sacrifice was to survive and thrive and become the person Sarah believed she could be. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if you believe in the transformative power of love even in the darkest places, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that hope can exist anywhere. Your support helps these stories reach people who need to hear them, who need to know they are not alone in their struggles. Maya made the decision to fight her way back to life. She earned her GED with the highest scores in the facility's history. She completed every available program: anger management, job skills training, computer literacy. She wrote poetry that was published in a small literary magazine that accepted submissions from incarcerated writers, and she poured every ounce of love and longing and determination into becoming someone worthy of the second chance Sarah had believed she deserved. On the outside, Sarah rebuilt her own life, finding work as a counselor for formerly incarcerated women, using her experience to bridge the gap between the system and those trying to re-enter society. And she waited, marking the days on her calendar, writing letters that Maya received and treasured, sustaining their connection across the divide of bars and wire and concrete walls. Before we reach the end of this journey, I want to ask something special of you. Please take a moment to leave a comment below sharing what this story meant to you, or tell us about a time when love gave you strength to endure the impossible. Your words create a community of support and understanding for everyone who reads them. The day of Maya's release arrived after 4 years and 3 months. She had earned early release through exemplary behavior and program completion. Sarah was waiting outside the gates as promised, and when Maya walked through those doors in civilian clothes with a small bag containing everything she owned in the world, Sarah was there with open arms. They held each other in the parking lot of Riverside Correctional Facility, two women who had found love in the most unlikely place, who had been tested by separation and sacrifice, and had emerged with their connection intact. Maya sobbed against Sarah's shoulder, finally able to touch the woman who had saved her life in every way that mattered, and Sarah whispered promises against her hair, that they would build a life together, that the hard part was over, that love had won against every odd stacked against it. They drove away from that place hand in hand, two hearts that had found each other behind bars, now free to love openly, to build a future on the foundation of everything they had survived. Proof that even in the darkest places, love can be the light that guides us home.